Guys, welcome to another episode of Conversations with a Recovering Loan Officer. And I'm joined today by a very special guest, Tammy. Do you still go by just Tammy Miller or
No, Tammy Hajjar Miller.
Hajjar Miller? Okay. Yeah. And I know when we first met you, there wasn't a hyphen.
No, there's still no hyphen. But when you first met me, I was Tammy Hajjar, and then I got remarried and added the Miller. But I don't leave the Hajjar because I still have two kids with that last name, right? So
That makes sense. Yeah, actually, I've been thinking about how we're going to do that because I'm a Brady Bunch family myself. And it's weird. The girls have their mom's last name. Their dad changed their name, his name. So they have her name. But when she and I get married, I'm not sure how that's going to work. They'll have their own name.
That is interesting. So yeah, I decided, so we have a blended family. We have 5 children total and a dog. So, but I have 3 and he has 2. And obviously their names didn't change, right? From my husband's side, from Bernie's side, Henry and Harrison kept their last name. But then when I got remarried, I want to honor my husband and hold his name. But then at the same token, I have Isabel and Nicholas, right, that have Hajjar. And I was like, well, I'm going to use Hajjar Miller then. And that's how we're going to have it. And then my oldest daughter actually has a different last name. She has her dad's last name. But yeah, I don't know how you're going to do it. Maybe your wife does it the same way, right? You just kind of maintains.
I think that I think we'll just copy you. I think that'd be a good goal for me. So
happy life equals happy life.
Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind, just introduce yourself, give us your background, tell us what you're up to.
Sure. Well, so I'm Tammy and I currently reside in Chicago. I have been here since 1976 and I'm 49 years young. So quick math, that means 2 years. My first 2 years, I was not here. I was in Korea because that's where I was born, in Busan, South Korea. My mom immigrated us here to the United States. We started off in Iowa for a hot second. It was not what she thought a big city looked like. So we came to the closest city, and that's Chicago. I have, by trade, I'm an accountant by trade. So I'm probably a little more linear number oriented. But by personality, I'm very colorful and vibrant. And so just the spreadsheet wasn't enough. And I career searched, and then and like probably most of us, bumped into the mortgage industry by accident in the thinnest thread. And it was the perfect marry of people and process. And so here I am about 18 years later and still actively produce. And now I do lead a team. I have my personal production and a team that I lead and coach and mentor. And I love the grind. For maybe as crazy as that sounds, I think we're a special industry, Michael. We're a special industry with mortgage. There's so much impact we have, and it's a feel good every day, right? We help someone achieve the American dream. Like, to me, it tickles me pink, when I wake up.
Yeah. I mean, that's really awesome that you can after so long still feel, really energized by what you do. Not many people get that in life, regardless of what career they pick. A lot of times they pick the thing they're good at. Well, they fall out of love with that thing or whatever. And so it sounds like you're going strong and also you've diversified, right? Because you were just producing. And now you're managing. What if you had to leave one of them on the table and walk away from the other? Like what would you do?
Well, I think that you naturally lead by who you are an example, right? So if you would say by title, which one, I would continue to produce. And all my team would say that that's probably why they were as tight as we are. I think I've had one team member with me for loan officer with me for almost 9 years. And we've been together for quite some time. And it's because I actively produce, right? So I understand the grind. I understand the conversation. I know what the clients are saying. I know what the referral partners are saying. And my feet are on the street, putting events together, face to face, belly to belly, presenting. I was doing just exactly that yesterday and the day before yesterday. So on Tuesday, I had a Zoom, I called it a learn and earn. right? And it was about tax appeals here in the Chicagoland area. What else do you need to know about tax appeals, real estate taxes? And I had a tax appeal attorney on. And then that was just via Zoom. And then I shifted yesterday, small mastermind. I had 13 people in the room, and I brought a realtor coach, and it was a very intimate conversation, but we went over a ton of tactics, from an $84 million realtor producer to other realtors in the room that some had been doing this for 3 years, some almost 25 years. But we can all learn to get better, right? So the production piece, I think, is a really, really important piece. The conversation is tighter. It's just, what you're doing. And I'm not saying from a leadership standpoint, for those that haven't produced in quite some time, that you don't know what you're doing. Obviously, you're a breadth and wealth of knowledge as well. It's just a little different of a perspective. Honestly, Michael, I love the people. I love sitting down with my clients. A lot of it now is via Zoom, right? They prefer the consultation over Zoom versus coming face to face. It saves them the commute. And I do screen shares, and I have spreadsheets, and we have a big conversation. They get the spreadsheet afterwards, and we go over, right, all the details of payment, cost, and how to get their pre-approval letters, all in that 30 to 40-minute consultation. And that's really kind of what fueled me, because the clarity around the money's just a language, right? Like English and Spanish, it's just a language. So I just help give them, kind of the quick about the money behind the real estate. So it gets the jitters out of the way, right? We celebrate with them. So I'll tell you, I think the production piece is, I know that was a little bit of a rant, but I think that production piece is a huge piece that really helps me stay sharp, and it keeps me in front of what fuels my heart, which is you can buy a home and build wealth through real estate, just like my family did, right? So to share the story too.
Yeah. So your family, you mean by your family, you mean you and Bernie, and
my
mean
mom.
your parents? Okay.
Yeah. So my mom, when she immigrated us here in 76, I was 2, as I had mentioned. And by the time I turned 5, she actually bought her first building. It was a mixed use building, meaning there was a portion that was commercial, and then we lived on the top floor. And she seller financed it, actually. So we were an immigrant, right? She didn't know the traditional credit kind of parameters. Now, banking was a little different back then. And she went to the owner of the building, and she had asked to purchase it. And he goes, well, can you get a loan? And she really didn't understand, what that meant, getting a mortgage. And so he did his own type of background check. And he said, you know what? I'm going to sell this to you, but I'm going to pretend to be the bank for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And then what I will do is walk you across the street, literally across the street from there was his bank. And I will help you get a loan through my banker, and we will help you then get the mortgage. Wow. So he essentially, the verification of mortgage was through this gentleman. And sure enough, 2 years later, she financed the home, and that was her first. So then she went and bought a business, and she just bought the business. And then about 6 years later, the owner of the building, it was in a long kind of commercial half a city block up in the Lincoln Square area of Chicago. And the owner of the building also owned one of the stores, the shoe store, Mr. Brumlett. And Mr. Brumlett came and said, Kimmy, I'm done with the business, and I think I'm kind of done with the building, and the kids don't want to keep it. Would you like to buy this building? And that's how my mom bought her second building. And that's all commercial. So 5 different commercial pieces. And then when she retired back in 2005, she bought herself a beautiful condo in downtown Chicago overlooking Millennium Park. And she dropped the mic, retired, bought herself that and a nice car. And so you think about that over time, right? Over 40 something years, she has built a beautiful wealth portfolio that pays her every single month. So that's the story of real estate I share. And then of course I have my own personal story, right? Buy a home, and then bought another home. But I love sharing these stories because, there's so much going on right now in the world, and gosh, it is interesting. But the United States is still an amazing country of opportunity. And I feel like my mom and I are walking examples of that. And so I just want to tell everyone, right? Like, it's only so much land. God's not making any more. So go get you some, right?
Yeah. That makes sense. Do you think that's a lot for someone brand new to the country. I mean, first off, she must have been like pretty solid in her threshold for risk taking, or did she just know? I mean, had she done this before?
That's a good question. So my mom is a powerful, just source of energy, and always big vision, not huge education. So didn't get past third grade, just because her family dynamic at the time didn't allow for it. But her parents passed away very young, and then kind of fast forward a little bit, she bought her first place when she was, I believe, in her mid-20s in Korea and in Seoul. And so she just had a vision for it, knack for it. She got that for quite a few years, and we moved here. And so my mom's always been a city lover, loves the energy of it, right? And she, again, just great vision. And for her, the risk was more of, I get to the other side of my years and I have more regret that I didn't do more than, you know what, if this doesn't work, it's going to be okay. I'll go do something else. But she always went for it. And again, her vision, she always knew, okay, here's a train station, and where's the water, and, where do people go to work, and what, so she always saw it. It just, for her, always came together. And again, the biggest risk for her was not taking the risk. We actually just had a conversation the other day about this. She was telling me about a couple opportunities. She had a consultant and kind of an attorney friend at the time, and he had suggested she not purchase those pieces of property. And she's like, Tammy, I should have bought them. And I said, well, Mom, hindsight 2020, yep, that would have been a great investment. But look at what you built, and it's afforded you a beautiful life, right? Mm-hmm. So always so good how she sees it.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I think that today, I talk to loan officers all the time, and it's a 50-50 bag with their business and how they're approaching it, right? A lot of people, they want to stay behind the keyboard and just not engage. They want the leads to come to them, and they want to work the ones that they get, but they're afraid to go out there because they don't want to fail or have rejection or something like that. They're afraid to get out there and talk to people, Mm-hmm. And one of my mentors growing up always used to say, people don't know you're in the business, you're not going to do any business. And so it's impossible to do business that way. So, it sounds like, her mentality rubbed off on you, and you don't, like you said, you're not afraid to get out there and get belly to belly with a new group of real estate agents.
No. And, I think sales is belly to belly, in my opinion, right? It's pick up the phone. And yes, again, so technology, what's great, what I love about even your app, right? The Pre-Approve Me app, what it allows us to do is be more efficient in, I don't want to minimize the process of getting the pre-approval letter, but really we did the work. The consumer did the work. The loan officers done the work. Why do we carry around the laptops to go ting, ting, ting to get a letter out? It's nonsensical to me. So it allows us to be technology. The best technology allows us as humans to be high touch by leveraging the high tech. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it is probably more comfortable, I guess, for some people, right? Different personalities. I think you have people, and then you have process people. I may be a little bit of an anomaly because I'm both, an accountant by trade. So I do like structure and organization, but I love the energy of people. That's really where I feed. And so it feeds me. Now, I was just listening to a podcast. I love podcasts. I love yours. And I was listening to Ed Milet. So have you heard of Ed Milet yet? Mm. So I'll text you this podcast. It was an awesome one. It was a quick one. And it's just, kind of mastering success, like the stages of success. And it's like 15 minutes. But what he talked about is like, if you think about it, some people, like, you look at them and I've been now doing this almost 20 years. And people look at me and they're like, oh my gosh, you're such a natural. Well, like, I've been doing this for almost 20 years. My goodness, I hope I look like I know what I'm doing. Or I would have to question myself, right? Yeah. But if you think about the stages, if you go back to the first anything you do, you're a little awkward. And then you have at-bats, right? And that awkwardness, you start to finally loosen up a little bit. And you become a little more mechanical. And so you get the technical side down. And then the third, and it's kind of like the mastery of it, right, is you get natural. Mm-hmm. And that's just the 1, 2, 3. And so I think, standing behind the spreadsheet, great. But you know what? We're not the Secret Service, right? This is not like, you shouldn't be the best kept secret in lending. Get out there, have good conversations. And yeah, some of the conversations you're going to totally flub. I mean, who hasn't, right? I'm coached at a very high level. One of the recent assignments is what we call whale accounts, right? We needed to go get whale accounts. And it just means, a top producing realtor, right? Our goal was to really go after 20 of them and pick up 5. Now, we're all top producers. So, it's top producer to top producer. And it's so funny because the first few conversations are incredibly horrible. Like, you would think I've never called anyone on the phone before, but there's like this intimidation and, I don't know what to say, right? And then I had a colleague in the same coaching program go, here's the hack I did. And what she did is she got more prepared, right? So it quickly moved her from the awkward to the mechanical. And then now she's like a natural at it because she went and did more homework. And then she practiced the conversation. And I think when you're more comfortable at doing something, it just makes it easier. And, for those of you that you're a little scared, I think we're all scared. But again, I use my mom's mentality, the risk mentality. What to me is worse? And what's worse is not flubbing up now and being uncomfortable. What's worse is me, like, I'm 49 now. So what's worse is me in even 10 years going, oh, I've totally done so much more. Oh, I should have just picked up the phone more, right? Whatever it is. So that, I guess, is how I look at it. And you know what? We're all there. We all have the fear. So call a good loan officer friend. Like, hey, what did you say? Just call a coach. Go get coached, right? Like, yeah. No one got the manual. I don't know if you got the manual, like you're a recovering, right, loan officer, but no one got the manual when we got into business. We all figured it out. So I think it's like just comfort in numbers and keep doing it again and again. But I'll send you this podcast. It was awesome, like 14 and a half minutes. And he just went 1, 2, 3. He explained it. You'll so identify. And I think all of us can learn from that one.
Oh, yeah, that sounds great. I'll put the link in the show notes so people can check it out as well. Yeah, I mean, repetition does make you more natural, but there's no question about it. I think, I remember when I first started Pre-Approve Me, and I was trying to record training videos on camera. This is way before pre-Zoom or online meetings even. Yeah. Being in front of the camera was so unnatural for me. I was just like, you need to click on the thing, over here. I watched some of those videos the other day and I couldn't believe it. And now if my team says, hey, we need a video about this thing, it's one take every time. Because what I've realized is perfection is actually a sign of unnatural, like, delivery. Mm-hmm. You don't have a conversation with somebody and always say exactly what you mean every time without saying or like once or twice.
We're human. We're not AI.
And so like, yeah, exactly. So we're not AI, and people know that. And so when they watch your recordings or they talk to you on the phone, it actually feels more natural if you're not completely on point, And if you make a mistake,
they appreciate it too, right?
More relatable.
Yeah, but definitely more relatable for sure.
Yep. I love it. That's awesome. So when you're going after 20 whales, the goal to catch 5, how are you identifying the people you want to work with?
And that's what it is. I kind of have this joke with my team. I'm like, hey, we're playing a game of Linder, kind of like realtor Tinder, right? And number one, you need to know what you're looking for. So what are the ideal characteristics of working like a VIP, a very important partner, right? What are those characteristics? And sometimes you have to start with your ideal client in mind so you can work the opposite way, right? Reverse engineer it. And then once you do that, then you're going and you're looking for someone who naturally works with those subgroups, right? So my 3 ideal clients is a first-time home buyer, a professional female, and families that are expanding or contracting. And it's because I love the education of first-time, providing the education to first-time home buyers. That's by that one. Number 2, I am a professional female, so I relate. And number 3, I am a family woman, right? I have families, I've blended families, I'm married, divorced, remarried. So that's why expanding or contracting. So it's who I identify with. And when I got clear on this, now I can go and I can look at these, whether it's a larger realtor account or maybe a larger CPA, right? Or financial planner, or there's right, the or list is rather deep. Then you start to figure out and get good at, well, who serves those 3 groups? And then once they do you align in core value, right? Do you actually want to hang out with them? Can you have a cup of coffee with them? Can you hang out with their spouse? I really think that when I was a younger originator, I kept separate my personal and business. I was like, I just don't want to mingle the 2. And I actually think I did it wrong for the first almost 10 years of my career. Because once I figured out that, no, I am one person. I'm not 2 people. I am one person. And what made me trigger is it was about 10 years ago. And I couldn't believe it. So at that time, Cheyenne was 21, Isabel was 9, and Nicholas was 6. And I had 2 people on 2 separate occasions, but the same event go, you have kids? I was like, oh my gosh, I have 3 kids. What do you mean do I have kids? But I realized I kept my personal and my business so separate that they only saw me on the business side, and I had not established any relationship on the personal side. So I almost seemed like just a talking head, like a robot, versus a person who has goals and all that other good stuff. So when this whale campaign came up, and I totally did it wrong the first round. So I went back and was asking, again, my colleagues in the same line of work, like, hey, how did you do this? And Laura was like, oh, this is what I did. And then Derek said the same thing. He's like, yep, I've done it this way too. And then I got a little verbiage over here. I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And then I went back at it because then I realized it's no different. The whale is no different than a newer producer. It's still the same process, right? Tammy, still stay true to yourself and see if it's someone you want to be in relationship with. And then the game of render becomes easy, right? Left, right. You see what I mean? Like, It just became much easier and natural. And I hosted this mastermind yesterday, and it was so amazing when I looked around the room, and I had this great coach. So, and he's a realtor from San Antonio, Patrick Conway. He was sitting there sharing everything he's done in his business with the other realtors in the room. Again, some have been doing this 3 years, some 25 years. And my heart smiled because I just learned to be a great connector. And then I just sat there and helped facilitate some of the conversation maybe, right? But that room all left with their notebooks full, with tactics to put into their business. And I just think when you finally go, you know what? What does it matter what they say about me, what they care, whether they like me or not? I mean, come on, we have almost 8 billion people on this earth, 330 million in this country. There's what, a million realtors? You only need about 25. Come on, right? Like,
you can find them.
Yeah, I think we can find them, right? So come on, just make it a little bit of a game.
There's no way to find them though unless you get out there and actually start failing. It's like any relationship. And that's, I think, what a lot of people miss too, is that, and you just hit the nail on the head. You said you would create business relationships, but then the people you're working with may not have respected your personal time because they had only professional interest in you. And you're like, well, I'm with my kids at their soccer game. And they're like, oh my God, you got kids. Maybe they can't relate, I felt the same way, and I made the same mistakes you did. Unfortunately, I had that coach earlier on in my career where he's like, you got to find model match realtors, like personally. And so are you personally going online and researching the real estate agents? Are you just using like MMI to look at production? How are you organizing and swiping left or right?
Yeah. So I think now with social media, it is easier than ever. I mean, Michael, do you remember right when we got in the business and there was nothing to look at, right? The listing books had barely just gone away, right? The old school listing books had barely just gone away. Exactly, right? And then there was this MLS, the multiple listing service, right? If we did milk routes, right? You would go to the brokerage, you would bring the receptionist coffee, you would hope to meet and walk in with someone today, and you had no idea what their production was. Now, maybe driving around town, the bigger agents, had developed in the listing agents, you would see their signs, right? So that's how I initially did it. When my first mentor had said, Bill was his name, he's like, you're going to be in the real estate, focus on the real estate industry, and you will always be busy. I'm like, okay. He goes, you need to find good real estate partners. I'm so grateful he taught me this, my very first mentor. But now look at what we can do. We can go online and people tell on themselves. If you go to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever social is your platform, people will tell you what's important to them. It's super interesting, isn't it? Oh, this is what I did on Mother's Day. This is an accolade I got. Look at this. I mean, come on, right? Like, I just got reminded of this, by the way. Like, I know it sounds obvious, and it is obvious, but I wasn't even doing this until just recently. I'm like, why am I making this so much harder for myself? And so I think it's a combination, right? So what are you looking for? I think you have to be clear on what are you looking for? What type of partner are you looking to add? Because you look at your business. So I'm going to pull this out just as like a visual. So this is an account pyramid. And so in my business, I look for an intimate 10, next 25, and then more, 50 more prospects. And really what I'm doing is I'm looking to develop better relationships. Mm-hmm. So I want 10 relationships that are ironclad. I go on vacation with you. We hang out together type of relationships. Those are my best. And then the next 25 is, we're in groove with each other. It seems like this works really well, and potentially you can move into an intimate 10 relationship. And then the following 50 are going to be, you kind of like get along, but maybe you just met them, you don't know yet. That's what I focus on. But you have to know, where are your holes? Like, what are you missing? Can you take another whale account, right? I mean, that's helping 10, that referral sources is sending you probably about 10 to 12 new families to help a year, right? Whereas your next 25, that's 4 families a year, right? So where's your capacity with how your team is set up? And then what do you need to add? And then you kind of reverse engineer that, right? Yep. I think the best way to add to your business is who do you already work with, that you have great relationship with, that know how you work. And you just kind of ask them, hey, Michael, you and I work so well together. I actually was looking at my accounts pyramid, and it looks like I have capacity for 2 more referral sources. And I love working with you. We know how we work together. Is there anyone in your office that, immediately you think of that is looking for a professional female loan officer who works with first-time home buyers, other professional females, and families who are expanding and contracting, right? And then it's easy, right?
Yeah, it's specific too. Giving them the 3 types of customer avatar that you prefer to work with really helps, because if you ask anyone if they know somebody who does real estate that would like me, that's so vague that it's impossible to put their finger on it, because they're like, well, I don't know what kind of interpersonal relationships they have or how that, it's the same when you're asking customers for referrals, right? It's very difficult to say, like, if you know anyone who wants to buy or sell real estate, or needs a mortgage, let me know. Well, that's hard to pinpoint. There's really hard to pinpoint anybody like that. So do you have a way when you're working with clients also? How are you asking them for referrals?
So when you're working with clients, during process is the best time to ask clients, right? Yeah. And because they're the most excited, they're talking with you consistently. Normally, I'm fishing for a compliment if I'm looking to ask for business. So, and they'll say, "Oh my gosh, Team Tammy is amazing. Like Tony's awesome, and I love talking to Tenzin or Ali." I'm just fishing for a compliment, right? And so I'll call to check in. I call it an honor call, and I'll be like, "So we'll role play a little bit. So I'm calling you, Michael, and we're in the middle of the process together. Okay, you're gonna buy a home. All right." But I was like, "Michael, how are you?"
I'm doing good, Tammy. Thank you.
Oh man, you know what? I was just talking to Tony this morning, and it's Touch Base Tuesday, and I know that I promised every Tuesday you're going to get some sort of a communication. I usually send it out via email. You'll see that, but I just want to place an honor call, and I wanted to see, are we taking care of you like I promised when we initially started working together?
Oh, absolutely. I've done 4 loans in my life, and none of them have gone as smoothly.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for that. And that's really our goal. I know initially I told you this was going to be fun. You thought I was crazy. I was going to make the mortgage process fun. So are you enjoying the little gifts that you're getting along the way?
I am. Yeah, I love the gifts. I love your check-ins. Just talking to you, knowing that you have our back means so much to my wife and I.
And, and that actually is what means the most to us. And that we were just like I said, I was talking to Tony about you, and we are saying how awesome you are. You're really like our ideal clients. You and your wife, you're expanding the family and you're moving on. And, so I'll let Tony know that you love the communications and that you're feeling honored. But I had a question. Do you have anyone like in your immediate circle right now that's looking to buy real estate in the next, say, 1 to 3 years, just like you guys?
Yeah, actually, my brother, he's recently divorced. They're splitting their household, and he needs to buy so his wife can have the current property.
Gosh, that's the tough situation. The big D, I've been through that big divorce, right? The big divide. Man, tell your brother, I'm sorry, been there, done that. It does get better. But I would love, what's your brother's name?
George.
George. Okay. Let George know that I've totally been through this myself, and I'd love to be a resource for him. So whether it's a discussion, it's really cloudy right now, I think, for him, right? Like so many things going on, so many plates he's spinning. So let him know that he can definitely call me or, just give him my cell phone number, and we can talk through some next steps and maybe what that looks like. And once, and if you're comfortable right now, I'll take his phone number right now. But okay, so that is pretty much just the conversation, right? Like find something to relate and go from there. But I think fishing for the compliment makes it much easier ask because they just told you how great it is. So I've gotten much better on this over the years. I think initially I wasn't so good with that. And I would just be like, "Oh gosh, thanks so much. You know what? If you know anyone who's looking to buy or sell real estate," I would use that line. It was funny you use that line, that initial one, because I would use that line. And it's such a non-specific ask. Right?
Yeah,
like
it's the starting point, though. It's how you learn.
Yeah.
I was, role playing is actually, I think, really an underutilized sales tool these days.
Mm-hmm.
Do you and your team, do you guys do role playing with each other, like on certain things like this, or?
Absolutely. So I host a daily team meeting with my personal production team. So not the loan officers I lead, but my personal production team. And the way my team is structured is I have what's called the loan partner one, from initial contact to contract. And the loan partner two is contract close. And then myself and an executive assistant, but that's a little different. But the loan partners, every morning we're having a team meeting and we're going over, right, what are we grateful for? Give a shout out, right? Let's go celebrate someone. But what are your top 3 priorities for today? And we have other things we talk about. But in those meetings, we actually do a quick role play because they have to ask me a question at the end of it. So, and the question may be, you know what, Tammy, I'm really struggling on trying to get a hold of these clients. And it's from so-and-so referral source. And so we have a process for everything. I was like, okay, so what's the voicemail you're leaving? Oh, well, it's, Tony at the Federal Savings Bank. Hey, I just wanted to touch base with you and I need you to call me 312, right? And they rattle off the number. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, so let's role play this. So why don't you, right? Like, hey, Michael, it's Tony over at the Federal Savings Bank. Gosh, you were referred to us by Philip. We love working with Philip. Philip's best. I know we haven't talked yet, but he referred you to Team Tammy. She's in an appointment right now. I just want to make sure we answered your questions and we get the process started for you. So man, if you could give me a call back whenever it's most convenient, I'll make sure I'm looking at my phone, 312, whatever the number is. Yeah. And so see, the difference is that we assume as salespeople that that's the message that got left. But how would they know that? Right? They're not the sales. They're like sales support. So I think the role playing is super key, and giving them a forum to do that and ask certain questions where it's non-judgment, right? Like ask me any question, right? And then I think as a salesperson, even though we're sales and we love kind of, the art of selling, I do think that there's a very specific science behind any good business person. And you have to look at the metrics, right? So if you're getting the leads and you're not converting them to pre-approval, you should start asking, well, what's not happening in that stage? But you need to start actually paying attention to your metrics, right? Like, what is your lead to closing ratio? What's your lead to pre-approval ratio, pre-approval to closing, right? Like you should know your metrics along the way. So that then tells on itself, and then you can go back to your team and start improving. And it's a trust yet verify, again, team members transition. We all just go back to kind of our normal thing, right? So if something doesn't feel right in your conversion numbers, they're like, hey, why don't we role play? What's the message we're leaving, right? And then they tell you, and then we can go back and refine it, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I know you've got 2 minutes, hard deadline here. Are you recording any of these calls and like reviewing the calls your teams are leaving, or?
No, I don't record. I know we have the ability to record the phone calls from the team members. I actually just do it live with them. Yeah. I'm a big trust person, and I think there's definitely an advantage to recording, but we're more retail sales versus consumer direct. I know my consumer direct counterparts definitely record. They have great kind of back and forth. But I'm on the go a lot. I'm, not in if I'm in my office too much, it's not a good thing for anyone, right? So I have to go and be on sale. So I use my team meetings and maybe some, kind of off calendar. We get together, do some more culture type of events. I use those as how are things going? What do you love? What are you struggling with? Annual, like I do quarterly check-ins, and then I do semi-annual reviews. We talk about stuff like that.
That's awesome.
I think it's great to record and review it. And then I do have them sit with me during consultations. If they're having a hard time getting a hold of someone, and it happens, and they're like, why did they pick up with you? Right? I mean, sometimes it's funny like that. Or they immediately call back and like, I just want you to hear what it sounds like. And then that way, you know how to make it sound when you call.
Man, I feel like we could talk for a few more hours, but Tammy, as always, it's awesome to chat with you and just get a little sliver of your experience on video here. And hopefully we can do it again soon.
Yes. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm Michael. It's like, I know I haven't seen you in quite a few years, but now we've been running on Pam for so many years. I am so grateful for you creating this technology. I love that you're a recovering loan officer and that you've moved to the tech space, because you have so enhanced so many people's lives, from loan officers, but even the clarity with clients, and they can run the scenarios, even with the realtors, and they can see the activity, right, and produce their own pre-approval letters. Like, your technology has really enhanced the industry on so many levels, with allowing that tech to allow us to go be high touch. So thanks for having me. Anytime, and I appreciate you.
Okay, take care.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.